So, continuing with design thinking, I'd like to talk about our next speaker, Matt Miller, who is, you have his bio to see all of the amazing things he has done. He's a co-founder of Project H, which brings design into the classroom as well, and does it in a pretty amazing way with also kids who are not so advantaged. And we had another co-founder of Project H last year at a design conference we hosted at the university, and it was another one of those places that just brought your heart right into your throat with empathy as you're seeing what can be done when we're willing to go that far. And so I'm very eager to hear this story once again, and where it's taken since it first occurred in North Carolina, in a very impoverished area of North Carolina, and now has moved to California and is an even bigger part of design education. It's not design education, it's bringing design to education. So Matt, so happy to have you. I forgot to mention, in addition to being all over the planet with spreading this, Matt's a native West Virginian, so welcome home.
Thanks. Thanks, y'all. It is actually great to be home. It was kind of surreal. I got off the airplane last night and came down with Bill through Little Washington, and I started seeing signs for Wheeling, where I grew up, and I got all super nostalgic and so forth. But allow me to just kind of black out for the next half an hour, and we'll see what comes of it. I'm going to follow my slideshow, and let's hope it's all good. But so yeah, no, I'm here today really to talk. Well, I'm here because of Project H Design, as Eve was saying, and more specifically Studio H Design. Studio H is a design-build curriculum that we started in North Carolina. Bertie County, North Carolina, very rural portion, sort of in the swamps in eastern North Carolina. But that we're currently running, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see it, in Berkeley, California. But I wanted to start out with a little project in Detroit that was actually my thesis when I was getting my Master's of Architecture at Cranbrook Academy of Art. It's a little project that continues to really affect my architecture and my design, but also is the impetus, the reason why I teach. Let's see if we get this right. There we go. Yeah, so this is circa like 2004, 2005 when I got to Detroit for the first time. This is Kwame Kilpatrick just before he was run out of office and sent to prison. And Cranbrook Academy of Art, if you don't know it, it's this beautiful sort of archetype of what higher education academia is. It was designed and built by Elio Saarinen back in the 20s, Finnish architect, and I'm going to read this. I found this quote when I was there: "The city's improvement and further development must be started with the problems of homes and their environments, and not, as is usually the case, with plazas, boulevards, monumental layouts, and other showy things." This is not what he's talking about. This is Bloomfield Hills. This is sort of in the neighborhood where Cranbrook exists. It's one of the top 10 richest neighborhoods in the country. I think this is what he was talking about. This is the Michigan Central train station downtown in Detroit. Again, this is, I think in 1950 when he passed away, this building was already starting to degrade, to be forgotten, and this is how it exists today if you've seen it. But my thesis coming out of Cranbrook was that within this seemingly intractable challenges of unemployment, poverty, crime, school dropout rate, homelessness, hemorrhaging economy, and concomitant despair, Detroit has become shorthand for post-industrial urban blight and anomie. It's a long way around saying that within this situation we really believe that there lies possibility and opportunity. kind of a cheeky slide of Detroit. But from this, we really took on the invitation of Elil and Kwame and decided to try to leverage what we had in Bloomfield Hills at Cranbrook and try to build a house. We're architects, we're architecture students. We know how to make this happen. We know that we can do this, and we're gonna take the Robin Hood approach and see if we can get funds from that neighborhood, take them downtown to Detroit and build a house for somebody. Why not? Some of the context, some of the existing housing in Detroit. Sorry. And there's, you know, at that time there was also a lot of housing being built, mostly on the low income sector. This unfortunately is what it looks like. Totally without reference or respect to its context. These things come on the backs of 2 trailers, and one little crane throws them together. They're up in about a week, and they throw people in them. Unfortunately, there's obviously so little design thought, there's so little time and care taken to who actually moves into these buildings, and ultimately it's design that's good enough for them. And of course, it's built with like absolutely the worst materials ever as well. And when the house next door was burned down, it actually melted. This is what happens to vinyl siding. Sorry. Can I get some water from you guys? Really sorry. I've been drinking coffee all day. It's killing me. Appreciate it. As you can tell, you get the B squad. Emily was here a year ago. She's the one that does all of this talk for Project H. So anyway, back to the thesis. So we had this idea to build a house. Great, awesome. We're going to go Habitat for Humanity model. We're going to do this sort of rural studio-esque kind of thing that happens in Alabama. We're just going to fly down into Detroit, spend some time there, find a family, build a house for them. Sounds awesome. It works everywhere else as far as we're concerned, and as far as we know, as far as the story goes. Everything that we hear out of the rural studio, post Sam Mockbee especially, is that all you got to do is come in, build a piece of architecture, family moves in, everything changes. So we found this fantastic neighborhood not too far from downtown. Campbell Elementary in particular. I'd been doing a little bit of work there with the art class, 3rd grade art class, and so we chose this place, this elementary school, as our sort of ground zero for where we're going to build and why we're going to build and who we're going to build with. Again, another quote, this time from another native West Virginian: "For the black poor, real progress may come only once they have an ownership stake in American society. People who own property feel a sense of ownership in their future and their society. They study, save, work, strive, and vote. And people trapped in a culture of tenancy do not." So we really took this to heart. This neighborhood, again, fantastic neighborhood, really close to a lot of amenities. Fresh produce, fresh fruit, there are absolutely 0 grocery stores in Detroit. But 5-10-minute walk from this neighborhood is the largest outdoor farmers market in the country, the Eastern Farmers Market. 40,000 plus people every Saturday. So we've got our neighborhood, we've got our project, we kind of know what we're doing. We found a site, 2126 Pierce Street, right under the little dot there where it says fire ruins. This was the neighborhood, this is a quick figure ground of the neighborhood in 1980. So this is already sort of ground zero again for that post-industrial urban white flight that I was talking about. There's already a lot of the housing stock missing. The white dots, the white squares, represent houses or outbuildings. This is at 25 years later when we got there. So 2006, we found this site, we found this neighborhood, still love it, but there's nothing left. Okay, so we're finally in color. It's literally an urban prairie. There are native ringneck pheasant running around, packs of dogs chasing them. But I'm proud to say that the barter services or the barter trade is in full effect still in Detroit. And for a piece of land, I built these 2 go-go cages for a club owner in the Eastern Market in direct trade, no joke, for that. It's a... for that clump of trees, 30 feet wide by 82 feet long. Cost me about $500 in steel. So we've got our site, we've got our neighborhood, we know what we're doing for a thesis. We got to find that family. So we go back to Campbell Elementary, we throw out these applications, we talk to and interview 30 plus families, see where they live, really get to know them, really talk to them, look at their financials and so forth and so forth. We ultimately landed on, after several interviews, Lakina Dozier and her 4 kids, Janae, Malaysia, Desmond, and Damon. Go through an intense design process, both with them, at school on our own, so forth. Too quick. We ended up graduating, and I keep saying we. I was partnered up with my friend Thomas Gardner on this. It was sort of a joint thesis. So we graduated in 2006 with a design. And at that point, I could have walked away. That was enough. I got my thesis, I got what I wanted, I'm gone. But stuck around for another 2 years, found the money to build this thing, and set about actually doing it. This was the first few weeks on the site. Unfortunately, in the 80s, when all of those houses burned down, that you saw from the previous slides, the city would pay contractors up to about $5,000 to raise those houses, to get rid of them, to ostensibly take them away. But what actually happened was they tore everything down, pushed it all into the basements, and sprinkled some topsoil over it. So 1/4 of our budget in the first week just literally disappeared, taking 400 yards of material out and sending it to the landfill. Just a few quick slides of the building construction process. I don't want to get into the design too much because that's not really the point. But foundation with other Cranbrook students, the Taubman Company, who actually funded most of this, some local homeless characters that would come by every day and ask for work, worked out pretty well. Foundation wall is going up, the design itself, again, I'm not going to go into detail too much, but putting up the second floor, so forth. The piece in context, just the view towards downtown. Window details, again, I'm an architecture geek, so I keep these slides in here, but if you guys aren't into architecture, it's kind of pointless. I'm proud of it. I'm still proud of the house. But so on January 14th, 2008, we were able to get Lakina into the house, and literally a week later, I left Detroit. I was so done. I was burned out, had my thesis, I had to leave. I ended up going to Africa for 6 months. I worked with Architecture for Humanity, did some work over there, finally came back. In that 6 or 8 month period, by the time I got back, so the way we set this up, Lakina was leasing the house from us for 2 years. If she gave us $400 a month, that covered her utilities, her taxes, insurance, everything. But we kept the title in our name. So after 2 years, if she was able to do that, if she was able to maintain the house, to treat it as, to take on the responsibility as a homeowner, she gets the title free and clear. Okay, so then she moves from tenant to owner, just what Skip Gates was talking about. I get back from Africa, and I basically find that she hasn't paid us anything. This is 8 months later. This is I guess October, so 9, 10 months later. The house is kind of totally in shambles. She's still living there, of course, but she literally hasn't paid us anything. That $400 was $100 less than what she was paying in rent for the shithole that she was living in before moving into this. So ultimately we kind of got played, but at the same time, we didn't educate her. We just assumed that the power of architecture was great enough to build it and to, okay, that's it, you're good. Drop into this house and it's going to change your life. Well, that's not good enough, clearly. So in the long run, we really ultimately did more damage to this family, I think, in putting them through the situation, in heightening their hopes for a better future, and to get out of that rut of tenancy, to ultimately be evicted again. So, obviously I show this. Well, there's a couple more slides. This is actually it. Last year, if you can see, the house was ultimately given to a nonprofit who pledged, well, their line was that they put people through a 6-month education program, teach them how to be responsible homeowners and such, and then give them these houses. Well, somehow, for some reason, I still don't know the whole story because they stopped returning my phone calls, but 3 months later, they foreclosed on a house they owed nothing on. Bank took it over, it went to a real estate agent. 2-3 years later, it's abandoned and tagged. So this is the house after only 5 years on this planet. So again, I'm showing you this because I think it's super important. Like, I've been to so many building conferences and listened to, especially academic folks, talk about how their design build programs are changing the world and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's so much fucking smoke up your ass because it doesn't always work. And I want to show you that failure because, again, it changed me and allowed me to stop and think and reflect on what the hell are we doing. So, back again in 2008, right after we put Lakina into the house, I met up with a friend of mine, Emily Pillaton, who had just started Project H Design literally a week before we met. After a couple years, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but after a couple years, we were doing some work together in North Carolina. And this fantastic superintendent found us online, found some work that we were doing, invited us to come out and continue to do some of that work, some of it pro bono, some of it he was paying us for as architects and designers. But through that conversation, through that relationship, we made this pitch to teach design build education to his kids, to what turned out to be a junior class in this sort of experimental high school that he had started. But the idea, of course, was to teach creativity, to teach creative thinking, critical thinking, citizenship again, and to do it through the lens of design, construction, and ultimately community outreach. So, let me get back here. So the goal was not to send these students, what were ultimately our students, to send our students to design school, to send them into any specific trade. So it's not the traditional vocational track, but rather, as this guy puts it, Charles H. Ham, that they may attain a wider range of mental vision, a more varied power of expression, and so be better able to solve the problems of life when they shall enter upon the stage of practical activity. So, Bertie County. This is a long, long story, and I've already told you a long story that I could have talked about forever, so I'm going to fly through this. But the very first year, these are all shots from the first year, we had these students, 13 of them initially. We ended up with 10, but 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for an entire year. First semester, well, and this is our shop. This is the one thing the school district gave us. Again, when I say it's a long story, we were brought in there by that superintendent, and literally a month after we moved there, he was fired. He got into it with his board, was fired. Our necks were on the chopping block, but we had enough grant funding to say, look, we'll do this for free for the first year and we'll see how it goes. I guess that's how committed we were or how reluctant we were to give the money back. I'm not sure. But so the one thing they did give us was this 5,000 square foot barn in a swamp that they were neglecting and didn't use, and just said, okay, go do your thing. Here's your 10 students. The studio space itself, we had a full working wood shop, full working metal shop, and this great little design studio. We set up the curriculum through a stage of small projects. Those projects building upon one another, scaffolding from starting out very small with, you guys might know this game, I'm in the right region of the world, cornhole. Yeah, exactly. Our kids knew it really well too. We go through the drawing process. We teach them how to draw. We teach them how to kind of look at the world in a different way, look at the world as a designer, and really to ultimately understand what I'm talking about to them, what I mean when I talk about sections and elevations and plans and so forth. But we get them into the wood shop. The cornhole project was really design boot camp as we saw it. These kids had never, picked up a tape measure. They had never picked up a hammer. I mean, they have zero skills when it comes to building anything. So we get them into the wood shop. They're building their stuff. We get them in Adobe Illustrator. They're learning about graphic design. And then ultimately the craft and the technique of really making something beautiful and making something different. So this is just a couple of the cornhole boards that we ended up with. I'm not going to go into the whole design process of this, but it's just another set. And then we jump scale. So we start off very small, like I said, with this design boot camp, and we jump scale to the scale of architecture, sort of, but chicken architecture, I guess. Bertie County is really, really well known, and the biggest industry there is Purdue, really well known for its chicken industry. But we wanted to critique that. We wanted to say, what does it mean to have 2 or 3 chickens in your backyard as opposed to 25,000 chickens in a single house? So again, through the design process, through this critical thinking process, taking the ideas in their head, taking the ideas of what this could be, and trying to manifest those into reality. So a couple of the drawings, I'm only going to show one of 3 that we built the first semester. Getting those things out, making models, really getting dirty, and then ultimately building them ourselves. Sorry. This was, if I go back, that was Colin and Anthony. But ultimately their scheme was to separate the functions of roosting and feeding, and then that piece in the middle, that spiral piece, represents the chicken run. It's the chicken view. Does the chicken see it? And then ultimately we gave it away to the Byram family, who, the way they actually make their income, they sell chickens, they sell eggs, and it actually serves as a sort of billboard on the main road there. Okay, so we take care of chicken scale architecture. And we knew going into this year, we had pretty good funding from the Kellogg Foundation, and we knew that we wanted to go big, and that we wanted to create, a real piece of architecture with these students that they would design and ultimately build with us. But we didn't know what that was. We didn't go into this neighborhood, this community, saying, this is what you need. This wasn't Detroit. These are the lessons learned from Detroit, obviously. And I was sitting in a Rotary Club meeting with this local activist and the head of the Chamber of Commerce and a town commissioner, and the notion of this farmer's market came up, and they were telling me the story of the defunct farmer's market that they had started like 2 or 3 years earlier. And it was really just this pop-up thing. They would throw tables out in front of the Chamber of Commerce, and initially the Chamber of Commerce was charging $5 for a parking spot to put your table up. By the second year, they were trying to charge $35 for a parking spot to put your stuff up. So obviously this model was unsustainable, but in addition, there was no presence for the farmers market, and that was the spark, if you will, right? We had this farmers market. We have no real good access to produce. There's one grocery store in the entire county, and its rates, it charges more than any of the counties surrounding because it has zero competition. But we're in a total food desert, and so we're like, okay, well, we're going to design a farmer's market. It's kind of obvious at this point. So we get with the town. The town helps us identify this piece of land down by the river. It's in a total flood zone. Nobody's going to ever build on it. But we take up that challenge. We take that up, saying that we're going to provide the funding, we're going to provide the design, the kids are going to provide the services, the construction services, and so forth. So back we go for another semester. This is semester 2, the entire time just working on the design of the farmer's market. Started out with 10 designs, ultimately hooked those kids up, paired them up into groups, had 5 designs that we took back to the town, had this great little opening in the town. I mean, this is a fantastic picture because this is Karan on the left. Karan's a 16-year-old. It's really fantastic because he's now at NC State studying engineering, really bright kid, had no voice really, had no real presence, but here he is in town with the owner of this guy with a PhD, owns the B&B, totally retired, has this really cush life in Windsor, but that interaction never would have happened without this design process, without this creativity that we put them through. Hooked up, again, Karan and Cameron, going through the design process, building models. And then ultimately we landed on one. So, I don't know, the next few slides. Really, it's just the building process. That was the first 2 semesters. We took them out for the following summer. We managed to raise enough funds to actually pay them to be on site. It was a little weird because technically they weren't allowed to use any power tools, so it totally constrained or changed how we were going to build. So literally we had to dig the foundations by hand. We had to do a lot of hand hammering and so forth, which I think ultimately was the way to do it. Just digging the foundations. I'm just going to run through these sort of building slides. Oh, this is my nod to Cameron, or maybe my attempt at giving him the finger for not being here, I'm not sure. Design like you give it him, but anyway, you get it. Raising the trusses, we were fortunate we had this amazing shop space, and we were able to prefab all of these trusses in the shop space during the last month of school. So as long as the students were in school, they could use power tools. So we were able to prefab so much of this, take it out to site, and then literally just kind of bolt it back together when they were not technically allowed to use power tools. Putting in floor trusses is Jamisha and Karan. Just getting the thing put together. Stevie up on the left. Stevie was the only one that turned 18 that summer, so he was allowed on a ladder. And on that shady skidster rig that we had. And then the final piece, during opening day, October 1st, 2010, I think, 2011. It was, again, constraint. I really think we are constrained as hell in so many different ways, but we were constrained even by the site. The kids were constrained in their design because, we're in this flood zone that nobody wants to build in. Our freeboard height was 3, maybe 4 feet above existing grade, so the entire thing had to be raised up. Well, one of the students, what Stevie figured out is, shit, this is great. It's like a built-in loading dock right in the back. So we've got to be up to the level of a pickup truck, the bed of a pickup truck. It worked really great. The function, of course, on the front side is for pedestrians, for customers, and so forth, and then on the back side is for the vendors. Just a quick shot of the vending booths. And then the glam shots inside with no people. And the glam shot at night. So I don't know. Obviously, what I'm learning from this and what I'm continuing to do here, and I guess the reason I'm here is to just say that ultimately the powers of architecture, like I said, are so limited when they exist in a vacuum. And when we don't go into communities and really start from the ground up. Charity doesn't work. This top-down shit doesn't work. We might as well be missionaries 150 years ago in Africa. But if we get in at the ground floor and if we get in and from the ground up, really work with the youth and empower them and give them a stake in their community, a reason to come back, maybe go away to college, but maybe come back and really take pride in where they're from, then I think architecture maybe has a chance.